Chapter 61. White Lies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 61. White Lies. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio, what did you say? Zhang Wu said in a trembling voice. He would rather believe that something had gone wrong with his ears. He had the guidance of the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao, but he had just touched the threshold of the flowing cloud movement technique. That guy, Lin Qi, had already mastered it with just understanding it for a bit. How could he accept that? The Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao also looked at Yu Yilin in a puzzle. The Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao had always known Yu Yilin very well. He never exaggerated or said anything uncertain. Why was he so immature like that day? He even said that Lin Qi had already mastered the flowing cloud movement technique. Master Yunxiao didn't believe this news. He thought that Yu Yilin had misunderstood or exaggerated. After all, Master Yunxiao knew that Yu Yilin valued Lin Qi. It was probably Yu Yilin who taught him the flowing cloud movement technique. I said that Lin Qi has already mastered the flowing cloud movement technique. Yu Yilin said it word by word that time. Only then Zhang Wu and the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao were sure that they didn't hear wrong. How is that possible? Zhang Wu couldn't accept it and lost his composure. As the sect leader, the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao was much more mature. He frowned and asked, Lin Qi, where did he learn the flowing cloud movement technique? The question hit the nail on the head. Logically speaking, outer disciples should only be able to cultivate the Bai Yun mantra. They would have to report it beforehand, even if they wanted to cultivate a higher level cultivation technique. They would normally have to wait 3 to 5 days before they were qualified to cultivate it. Yu Yilin did not have any intention of hiding anything and immediately told the truth. Master, I was the one who gave the flowing cloud movement technique to Lin Qi. I saw that Lin Qi was talented and thought that it would be beneficial for his cultivation if he tried to learn the flowing cloud movement technique now, so I decided on my own. Please punish me for my blunt act, Master. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao looked relieved and waved his hand upon hearing that. It's just a small matter. Why will I punish you for that? Besides, Lin Qi does have some talent. I also think that he can start to learn the flowing cloud movement technique. At this point, Master Yunxiao paused and continued. However, you are at a crucial moment to familiarize yourself with the affairs of the Bai Yun sect as the main disciple. How can you waste a lot of time for an outer disciple? Yu Yilin was slightly stunned when he heard that. Then he understood. It seemed that Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao had misunderstood. He thought that Yu Yilin must have taught Lin Qi all day long to master the flowing cloud movement technique in such a short time. Zhang Wu naturally understood what Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao meant. His expression softened a little, and his emotions gradually calmed down. Although Lin Qi's progress had once again surpassed his, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao would occasionally give him some advice when he guided him. He would allow Zhang Wu to slowly feel it and slowly explore it most of the time. According to Master Yunxiao, the results of cultivating in such a method would be better. Zhang Wu naturally did not have any objections since Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao said so. Therefore, he obediently cultivated in the training room for an entire day before he slightly grasped the tricks of the flowing cloud movement technique. And if Yu Yilin had taught Lin Qi personally all day long, then it was not surprising that Lin Qi could achieve something so quickly. Zhang Wu even guessed what happened maliciously. Perhaps Yu Yilin was exaggerating Lin Qi's realm to show that he, the main disciple, had taught him well. Zhang Wu's mood became better all of a sudden. However, what Yu Yilin said next made Zhang Wu doubt his life again. Master, Yilin only gave Lin Qi the bamboo slip that recorded the flowing cloud movement technique and didn't give Lin Qi any advice. Yu Yilin looked at Zhang Wu awkwardly after saying that. Yu Yilin didn't dare to hide anything and could only tell the truth in front of the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. However, this might greatly affect Zhang Wu's confidence and even affect his passion for cultivation. As expected, Zhang Wu's face was filled with shock as he muttered to himself in a low voice, "Impossible, impossible, I don't believe it, I don't believe it." Yu Yilin secretly sighed upon seeing that. Yu Yilin himself probably would not have believed it if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. However, the matter was right in front of him. There was nothing he could do even if he didn't believe it. Lin Chi had indeed mastered it. Moreover, there was one thing that Yu Yilin hadn't emphasized yet. Lin Chi had gotten the bamboo slip early in the morning, and someone said that he had gone back after just a few glances. It had been a long time since Yu Yilin had gone to see Lin Chi. An entire day had passed when he came back to report to the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. After all, Yu Yilin was busy as the main disciple and had plenty of things to deal with. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao and Zhang Wu naturally thought that Lin Chi had spent an entire day learning the flowing cloud movement technique. However, just knowing that Lin Chi had mastered it have shocked them so much. Zhang Wu might be defeated and never recover if he told the truth. Yu Yilin decided not to tell the whole story after pondering about the pros and cons. Of course, Yu Yilin wouldn't dare to hide anything if Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao asked in detail. Fortunately, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao didn't ask for details. One day was already incredible. Who would ask how long it took? It was like a commoner who had never practiced cultivation saying that he could kill a cow with one punch. That matter was already unbelievable enough. No one would ask, then can you crack the mountain with one punch? It was because of such habitual thought that Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao and Zhang Wu missed the truth. Yu Yilin did not feel the slightest bit guilty about this. After all, he was thinking about Zhang Wu's state of mind. Such a white lie was also a helpless act of his. Moreover, he did not deliberately lie. He only said that Lin Chi had learned it, not that Lin Chi spent an entire day to learn the cultivation. They were the ones who didn't ask. Yu Yilin excused himself upon seeing that Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao didn't ask further, saying that he still had things to deal with. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao turned to look at Zhang Wu beside him and frowned slightly. At first, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao thought that Lin Chi was just good at using the aura in his body. But now, it seemed that he had made a mistake. Lin Chi was a true genius. It was indeed amazing to master the Baiyun mantra in one day. But he had already mastered the flowing cloud movement technique the next day. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao was clear what that meant. A favored son of heaven. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao's gaze towards Zhang Wu had gradually lost the sense of anticipation. Although Zhang Wu was good, he was not worth mentioning compared to Lin Chi. He must make Lin Chi his disciple. Chapter 62. Ineffective Communication. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 62. Ineffective Communication. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. The sky gradually turned dark. The disciples of the Baiyun sect had returned to their residences to rest after a day of cultivation. A lightning speed ray of light streaked across the sky at that moment. That was naturally not a shooting star. It was the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao who was flying on a sword. The white ray of light wrapped around the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao and streaked across the sky at a rapid speed. His target was the hostel where Lin Chi was currently staying. Although Lin Chi was only an outer sect disciple, he was quite talented. So he received the treatment that only inner disciples had. Lin Chi was sitting alone in the room, feeling what he gained that day. The flowing cloud movement technique was indeed incomparably exquisite. That was Lin Chi's greatest feeling after a day of cultivation. It turned out that it was no longer just an increase in speed and agility after cultivating the flowing cloud movement technique to its peak level. He could even increase the sensitivity of all his senses with the enhancement of the genuine qi in his body at the same time. Lin Chi could not fully explain the principle behind it. Even though the flowing cloud movement technique had already reached the maximum level with one click after the system's enhancement on it. However, it was only the power of the flowing cloud movement technique. The understanding and profoundness of the flowing cloud movement technique was not something that the system could easily give to Lin Chi. He had to explore everything by himself, just like exploring the Gautama Buddha's palm from his previous reincarnation. Lin Chi had relied on his understanding to create a move that did not exist in the Gautama Buddha's palm. Therefore, the maximum level of the system did not mean that it could not improve further. Lin Chi did not even dare to slack off on this point. At this moment, a solemn expression suddenly appeared on Lin Chi's face. It was as if a powerful aura had arrived outside his door. Moreover, it was extremely fast. That was naturally the benefit of cultivating the flowing cloud movement technique to the extreme. Lin Chi could easily feel the aura of the people around him. Dong! 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 Please come in. Lin Chi adjusted his expression and said calmly after hearing the knock on the door. Although Lin Chi didn't know who the person outside the door was, he didn't want to show that he had already noticed his existence. He only wanted to cultivate his strength in peace and didn't want to cause any trouble. The door was opened upon hearing Lin Chi's answer. And the person outside was naturally the sect master of the Bai Yun sect. Taoist spiritual master Yunshao. Lin Chi, it's so late and you haven't slept yet. Taoist spiritual master Yunshao walked into the room slowly. He observed the room while asking Lin Chi with concern. The room was clean, without a trace of disorder. That made Taoist spiritual master Yunshao nod his head in satisfaction. Although the cleanliness of the room had nothing to do with cultivation, it had to do with a person's temperament and character. At least, it could be seen that this disciple of Lin Chi was relatively decent from these details. Lin Chi could not ignore and could only answer when he heard the Taoist spiritual master Yunshao question. Reporting to Taoist spiritual master sect master, this disciple is preparing to rest. What Lin Chi meant was he was going to bed at that moment. If the Taoist spiritual master Yunshao had something to say, he should make it quick. As the sect master, how could Taoist spiritual master Yunshao possibly think that a new disciple was chasing him away by saying that? Therefore, Taoist spiritual master Yunshao thought it meant something else when he heard that. He was just preparing to rest now. Did this mean that he had been training hard just now? As expected, Lin Chi was not only talented. He was also very hard working. He was a good seedling. Taoist spiritual master Yunshao showed an appreciative expression when he thought of that. And that expression had another meaning in Lin Chi's eyes. Lin Chi's whole body shuddered upon looking at Taoist spiritual master Yunshao's eyes that were almost shining. F***ck. What is with that old man? He came to my room late at night and looking at me with such a gaze instead of going to bed. Could it be that this guy had that kind of intention? Next, Taoist spiritual master Yunshao sat next to Lin Chi naturally to show his amiability. Then, he stretched out his hand and placed it on Lin Chi's hand. He smiled and said with concern, Lin Chi, although cultivation requires everyone to work hard on their own, you should also pay attention to moderation and not hurt your body. Lin Chi could no longer control his facial expression anymore, and his face turned pale with fright. Is that old man so straightforward? He's sitting on my bed just like that. Holding my hands just like that. Is he trying to force it? Lin Chi was already considering whether he should spend some points to directly purchase some more powerful cultivation techniques to protect himself when he thought of that. Although he had already mastered the Bai Yun mantra and the flowing cloud movement technique, he was not arrogant to think that he could easily fight against the sect leader of a sect. However, Taoist spiritual master Yunshao had once again misunderstood Lin Chi's shocked expression. To Taoist spiritual master Yunshao, Lin Chi was flattered. It seemed that his amiable attitude had played a role. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao quickly said, Lin Qi, I want to ask you, have you thought about it? Lin Qi was stunned when he heard that. Thought about it? Thought about what? What do I have to think about? Is he referring to the current situation? Lin Qi was more certain that the old man in front of him seemed to be a righteous and upright person on the surface and was a gay who liked to young men in the dark when he thought of that. He must be asking if he had considered whether to make out with him. Lin Qi immediately shook his head when he thought of that and said, Sect Master, I have thought about it and decided not to. He was afraid that he did not express it enough in the end, so he added. This disciple prefers to be alone. He must have rejected right. He couldn't force a little disciple like him to do that as a sect leader, right? Sure enough, a disappointed expression appeared on the face of the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. Lin Qi heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that expression. It seemed that the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao had given up. The Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao was asking if he had considered the matter of becoming an inner disciple. However, Lin Qi did not take this matter to heart at all. After all, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao was the one who asked him to consider. Lin Qi had rejected it directly. Therefore, the two of them had misunderstood each other's intentions throughout the whole talk. However, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao looked at Lin Qi with a burning gaze and said, Lin Qi, I admire you. I've never said this to anyone, not even Yilin. I won't give up on you. Lin Qi was shocked. Yu Yilin had such a relationship with Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. Chapter 63. Fans, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 63. Fans Translator. Nyo I.bo Studio Editor. Nyo I.bo Studio. Lin Qi was in complete shock at that moment. He didn't expect that the sect leader, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao, had secretly done something like that. At first, Lin Qi thought that he was the only victim. He didn't expect that senior Yu Yilin had been suffering the old man's harassment. Lin Qi felt a chill when he thought of how respectful Yu Yilin was to Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. He did not expect that the Baiyun sect, a reputable sect, would be in such an awful situation. The sect master looked everywhere for a talented and handsome disciple to perform the exchange of yang with him. Just as Lin Qi was pondering whether he should leave the sect, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao finally stood up and walked out of the room. Before he left, he even turned around and glanced at Lin Qi. There are some things that I won't force you to do, but I hope you can consider it carefully. After all, this will bring you great benefit. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao left after saying that. He knew that taking in a disciple was also a matter of mutual consent. After all, he was also the sect master of the Baiyun sect. It was already sincere of him to lower himself to speak to this extent. Next, it would depend on Lin Qi. And Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao did not know that Lin Qi still wanted to refuse. And he refused without any hesitation. However, Lin Qi thought that in his heart and did not directly say it in the end. He was worried that Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao would force him eventually. Lin Qi definitely would not be able to resist if that was the case. He could only forcefully commit suicide and return to the origin world. His reincarnated evaluation would be a little lower at the very most. He had earned 100,000 points from his first reincarnated, and now he still had over 90,000 points. He had some savings. Lin Qi would not hesitate to spend the cost of one reincarnated to avoid the danger of having his ass raped. Fortunately, the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao did not look like he liked using force and let Lin Qi consider it himself. Only then did Lin Qi give up on the idea of committing suicide. But Lin Qi began to seriously consider whether he should leave the Baiyun sect at the same time. After all, having a powerful gay by his side still made him feel uncomfortable. Lin Qi wanted to leave. But only the Baiyun sect was quite normal among the three major sections. The Golden Mountain Temple was full of monks. Although Lin Chi was only a passer-by in this world, he knew he could not be a monk for a long time. And not to mention the other sect. The Chinese all knew what sect this was. To put it bluntly, it was a nunnery. Lin Chi couldn't just cut his men's feature to enter a nunnery. So, Lin Chi had little choice but to stay in Baiyun sect. As for those small sects, there was no need to consider them. The fact that they could only be small sects was enough to explain the problem. They didn't have any powerful cultivation techniques. However, he had to think of a way to protect himself in the Baiyun sect. He couldn't just be afraid all day. Lin Chi had an idea as he thought about it. Lin Chi was instantly excited. There was only one way to avoid the clutches of the Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao and not leave the Baiyun sect. That was to become a disciple of another elder. The Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao could not be too intimate with Lin Chi as long as he became a disciple of another elder. The elder would stop him even if Lin Chi couldn't. Lin Chi felt that this method was feasible as he thought about it. After all, the elders would fight over him with his talent. However, he still needed to consider what method he should use to become their disciple. Thus, Lin Chi sat on the bed and thought about the plan of becoming the disciple while operating the Baiyun mantra. Lin Chi arrived at the public training area early that morning. He was still in high spirits, and there was not a trace of fatigue on his face even though he had been training for the whole night. Baiyun mantra was indeed exquisite. Lin Chi felt the benefits of the Baiyun mantra and became even more determined to stay in Baiyun sect. Next, he had to carry out his plan. However, he still needed an opportunity now. Senior Lin Chi, is that you? A girl's voice came from behind him, which made Lin Chi slightly stunned. Then, he turned around. Behind him was a girl wearing a long green dress. She didn't look old either, about 17 years old. The girl's face filled with joy and shyness at that moment when she saw Lin Chi turn around. She didn't know what to say or some time. I'm Lin Chi. What can I do for you? Lin Chi said calmly. No, it's nothing. I just want to get to know you. The girl who spoke to Lin Chi seemed to be flattered and stammered. Lin Chi finally understood. This girl seemed to be his fans. Maybe he could make use of her. Lin Chi smiled upon thinking of that and said, Junior, I want to ask you for a favor. What favor? Senior Lin Chi, feel free to ask. I'll help you if I can. The girl looked excited. She almost said that she would even sleep with him. Lin Chi knew that he had already succeeded halfway when he saw that the girl agreed. So he continued to ask, Junior, may I ask, are you familiar with any inner disciples? Inner disciple. The girl was slightly stunned, then pointed at herself and said, I am an inner disciple. You are an inner disciple. Lin Chi looked at the girl in front of him with a puzzled face and asked, why did you come to the public training area reserved for outer disciples since you are an inner disciple? The girl quickly explained as if afraid that Lin Chi would not believe her, I am an inner disciple. I came here only to. The girl suddenly stopped talking when she said that. Lin Chi was curious this time. Only what? The female disciple's face suddenly blushed when Lin Chi asked, and her face was full of struggle. She mustered up her courage in the end and said as if she had made up her mind, I just wanted to see Senior Lin Chi. Her voice was as tiny as a mosquito at the end of her words. At the same time, the female disciple's face also blushed more. After all, a girl would feel shy when saying such words. Lin Chi immediately understood. It seemed that this female disciple was a fanatic fan of his. She was willing to come to an outer disciple's place to meet Lin Chi. That was indeed a little unfair for an inner disciple. However, Lin Chi felt that this girl was the best candidate for him to use. I want you to tell your master that I want to become your master's disciple and become an inner disciple. Then, Lin Chi added as if he had thought of something. Of course, if your master is the Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao, then forget about it. Chapter 64. Flying on a Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 64. Flying on a Sword. Translator. Nyo I.bo Studio Editor. Nyo I.bo Studio. The female disciple was stunned for a moment before she reacted. She quickly waved her hand and said, "No, no, no, my master is not the sect master. My master is Elder Guan." Then, she looked at Lin Chi's face and asked tentatively, "Then, are we going to go and meet my master now?" "Yes." After saying that, Lin Chi took the lead and walked out of the cultivation zone. The female disciple was stunned for a moment before she quickly followed him. Lin Chi stood there and looked at the horizon without saying a word when they arrived at the open space outside the training area. The female disciple came to Lin Chi's side. She didn't say a word either upon seeing that Lin Chi didn't move. The two of them stared and looked at each other. Senior Lin, aren't we leaving yet?" "What's the matter, Senior Lin? Did you forget to do something?" "Senior Lin. Senior Lin." Lin Chi couldn't help but cleared his throat upon hearing the repeated questions of the female disciple and said, "You should know who I am, right?" The female disciple was stunned when she heard that. She didn't understand what Lin Chi meant, but she still answered weakly, "Of course I know. You are Senior Lin Chi. Then you should know that I'm a new disciple who just joined the Baiyun sect these 2 days, right?" The female disciple still did not understand what Lin Chi meant. She blinked her big eyes and nodded. "I know." Lin Chi sighed and finally said straightforwardly, upon looking at the innocent expression of the female disciple in front of him, "Do you know how to ride a flying sword?" The atmosphere became a little awkward at this moment. Logically speaking, everyone here should know that Lin Chi didn't know how to ride a flying sword yet. But this female disciple just had to call him Senior Lin. She subconsciously forgot about this. As for Lin Chi, he couldn't just say things like, "I don't know how to ride a flying sword yet, take me for a ride," or something like that. After all, he was a man, so he had to save some reputation. However, this female disciple wasn't smart enough. So Lin Chi could only use this method to remind her. Fortunately, although this female disciple wasn't very good at the ways of the world, she finally understood what Lin Chi meant and immediately said in embarrassment, "Senior Lin, I'm sorry, I forgot that you don't know how to ride a sword yet." Lin Chi was even more speechless now. "You knew that I didn't know how to ride a flying sword, yet you still had to say it out loud. Don't you know how to give me some reputation?" However, Lin Chi couldn't be bothered to blame this female disciple. Right now, he only wanted to quickly acknowledge her master as his master and find someone to protect him. Then, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao wouldn't keep thinking about him. However, the female disciple still didn't take out her immortal sword after a long time. Lin Chi was even more confused at that moment. He looked at the female disciple in puzzlement. The female disciple's face instantly turned red, and she whispered, I am not able to ride the sword well. I can't even fly by myself." Lin Chi finally understood. It seemed that this so-called inner disciple in front of him was also a rookie who didn't have good cultivation. Lin Chi sighed helplessly and said, "It's fine if you are not good at it. Just tell me the mantra for flying on a sword." The female disciple was slightly stunned and immediately told Lin Chi the mantra. Lin Chi's meaning was obvious. Since she wasn't good at flying, he might as well learn the mantra and fly the sword with her. However, although the female disciple could understand Lin Chi's meaning, she was skeptical about the reliability of this matter. After all, no matter how talented one was, one couldn't learn the mantra right after listening to it. However, ding! Detected that the host is learning flying sword technique. Do you wish to use 5,000 points to cultivate to the maximum level with one click? Yes. Lin Chi seemed to be memorizing the mantra in his heart from the perspective of the female disciple. Lin Chi had already cultivated the flying sword technique to the maximum level in that instant. Lend me your sword. Lin Chi raised his hand. The female disciple covered her mouth and laughed, Senior Lin, even if you. The female disciple heard a metallic sound coming from behind her before she could finish her words. Then, she felt the weight on her back had lessened. The immortal sword on her back was automatically unsheathed. It slowly landed beside Lin Chi's feet after circling in the air. The female disciple was shocked. Her mind went blank. What had happened just now? Am I dreaming? Wait, let me think. Senior Lin just asked me the mantra for the flying sword technique. Then, he said that he wanted to borrow a sword from me. Then, my sword flew out. Senior Lin, who had just heard the mantra, already knew how to fly on a sword. The female disciple's heart was already in turmoil. And the Lin Chi in front of her had once again become tall and mighty in her eyes. That man was so powerful. The female disciple was not good at cultivating yet, so she couldn't see the crucial part. It was indeed surprising that Lin Chi had learned how to ride a flying sword. But the most surprising thing was that Lin Chi could use the flying sword technique mantra to control the sword carried by others. That was thousands of times more difficult than learning how to ride a flying sword. One had to know that things like immortal swords that had spiritual energy were connected to the owner's mind. In other words, one sword was often more obedient than other swords. It was more difficult to control someone else's sword than controlling an ownerless immortal sword. Not only that, the female disciple's immortal sword was not in Lin Chi's hands. It was behind the female disciple herself. That increased the difficulty by many times. If Yu Yilin or one of the elders saw this scene, they would probably be so shocked that they would doubt what they saw on the spot. Hey, it's time to go. Lin Chi was already standing on the immortal sword and couldn't help but remind her. Ah. Oh, okay, the female disciple recovered from her shock upon hearing Lin Chi speaking. She stepped on the immortal sword in a daze and stood behind Lin Chi. Lin Chi silently recited the mantra after the female disciple steadied herself. The immortal sword immediately soared into the sky under Lin Chi's control. Although it was a little slow at first, Lin Chi quickly adapted to this method of control. The two of them soon arrived at Elder Guan's branch, Yanhui branch, with the female disciple directing the direction from behind. The atmosphere in the Yanhui branch was village-like, unlike the heavenly atmosphere in the main branch that was shrouded in clouds and mist. It looked like a small village on a mountain. Many disciples greeted the female disciples warmly along the way. Lin Chi was surprised to hear them address the female disciples. It was because all the disciples called her Junior Guan. The elder of Yanhui branch also had the surname Guan. There can't be such a coincidence, Lin Chi couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Soon, the two of them arrived at a three-entrance mansion. Junior Guan shouted as soon as they entered the mansion, Dad, look who came back with me. Chapter 65. Guan Xiaoyu, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 65. Guan Xiaoyu translator. Nyo I.Bo studio editor. Nyo I.Bo studio. Lin Chi lost his composure upon hearing the female disciple's words. Elder Guan is your father. A random female disciple turned out to be the elder's daughter. What was even more ridiculous was that this female disciple was his fan. It was difficult for Lin Chi to remain calm when such a dramatic scene happened to him. Junior Guan turned around with a smile and said, Yes, Elder Guan is my father. I forgot to introduce myself. You don't know me yet, do you? I'm Elder Guan's only daughter, Guan Xiaoyu. After saying that, Guan Xiaoyu raised her head and looked quite proud. Lin Chi finally understood at that moment. No wonder that female disciple looked silly. It turned out that she had never faced the wickedness of the world. No wonder this female disciple was an inner disciple even though her cultivation was not good. It turned out that it was because her father was an elder. She was King's second generation of an officer. A middle-aged man's voice came from the house just as he was speechless about the fact. Xiao Yu, why did you sneak down the mountain? I haven't punished you yet, and you still dare to. A short-haired middle-aged man in a gray robe said as he walked out of the house. That person was the elder of Yanhui branch, Guanzhen. Guanzhen seemed to be quite dissatisfied with his daughter secretly leaving Yanhui branch as if he wanted to punish her. But Guanzhen froze on the spot the moment he saw Lin Qi. This disciple, if I'm not mistaken, you're Lin Qi, right? Guanzhen couldn't help but ask. Lin Qi smiled and replied respectfully upon hearing that, greetings, Elder Guan. I didn't expect you will still remember a new disciple like me. It's an honor for Lin Qi. It was indeed Lin Qi. Guanzhen immediately put on a warm smile upon hearing Lin Qi's reply. He went forward and held Lin Qi's hand as they walked into the house. Even his daughter was forgotten outside the door. It seemed that he had ignored her. Dad! Why did you leave me here like this? Guan Xiaoyu grumbled. Guanzhen still pulled Lin Qi forward and told Guan Xiaoyu without looking back, do you need someone to guide you around your house? Come in yourself. Guanzhen wanted to bring up the matter of his daughter going down the mountain without permission, but Guanzhen swallowed his words since Lin Qi was still here as a guest. After all, one should not expose one's dirty laundry. He could take care of Guan Xiaoyu's matter later on. Guan Xiaoyu stomped her feet angrily upon seeing that her father had led Lin Qi into the house and did not seem to care about her at all. In the end, she had no choice but to follow him. Guanzhen and Lin Qi were already sitting in the living room. Although he was concerned about whether Lin Qi had adapted to Baiyun Mountain or whether his cultivation was going well, he wondered in his heart. Why did this favored son of heaven come to Yanhui branch today? Could it be that he wanted to enter the inner sect? No, it was impossible. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was rejected too when he wanted to take Lin Qi as his disciple. He was just an elder. Elder Guan, I want to enter Yanhui branch, Lin Qi sipped his tea and said calmly. Elder Guan, are you unwilling to accept me? Lin Qi frowned slightly. Guanzhen was slightly stunned when he heard that and quickly said, I am willing to accept you. I will naturally groom a talent like you well. Guanzhen was happy at this moment. He did not expect that he would be able to have such a shocking disciple. One had to know that all the geniuses would be snatched away by the sect leader. When would it be his turn? But at the same time, Guanzhen also noticed something strange. He was already over 40 years old, but he felt a little reserved in front of this 16-year-old youth. Yes. Reserved. Lin Qi seemed to always be like an enormous mountain, steady and unperturbed in front of him. He was not nervous at all because of his identity as an elder. On the contrary, he was subconsciously a little cautious when facing Lin Qi. Guan Xiaoyu's voice sounded when he was in a puzzle, pulling him back from his thoughts. Dad! How did you? Alright, it's already good that I didn't punish you, but you still dare to complain. After saying that, Guanzhen turned his head slightly and glanced at Lin Qi, how about this? You will be punished for going down the mountain without permission. However, it's a happy thing that Lin Qi joined my Yanhui branch today. I'll send you to arrange a place for Lin Qi and bring him around to familiarize himself with the environment. I'll consider it as a punishment for you. Guanzhen had his reasons for doing this. Letting his daughter lead Lin Qi to familiarize himself with the environment would show his greatest sincerity. Moreover, Lin Qi and Guan Xiaoyu were around the same age. His daughter, of course, had an outstanding appearance. As for Lin Qi, he was also one of the best among the younger disciples. He was also handsome. It would be a good thing if the two of them could have a good match. Guanzhen felt that his arrangement was brilliant when he thought of that. He was in a good mood and took a sip of tea happily. Guan Xiaoyu was also quite happy when she heard Guanzhen's arrangement. She said excitedly, "Dad, has Senior Lin joined Yanhui branch?" Guanzhen smiled and nodded slightly. He could not hide the pride in his eyes. Of course. The position of Yanhui branch in the Baiyun sect would rise a lot in the future with a disciple like Lin Qi. Alright, let's stop here for today. It's more important to settle Lin Qi down first. Xiaoyu, you must make good arrangements. Guanzhen was afraid that his willful and playful daughter would mess things up, so he reminded her again. How would he know that his daughter was a fan of Lin Qi? Xiaoyu approached Lin Qi mysteriously after Guanzhen left and asked, "Senior Lin, how did you learn how to ride a flying sword?" Guan Xiaoyu had been thinking about this in her heart. She really could not understand why she had not learned how to ride a flying sword after learning it for 3 months, while Lin Qi had learned how to ride a flying sword after listening to the mantra. Lin Qi looked at Guan Xiaoyu's curious expression and could not help but laugh. "I was just lucky. I'll have to trouble Junior Guan to arrange a place for me." Lin Qi naturally could not tell Guan Xiaoyu how did he learn how to ride a flying sword. He could not tell Guan Xiaoyu that he had a system that allowed him to reach the maximum level just by one click. Of course, Lin Qi could also say that he was a genius. That was more or less a little shameless. However, Lin Qi did not say it directly, but Guan Xiaoyu interpreted his words like that. Lin Qi was a favored son of heaven, so it was not surprising that he could learn it in a short time. Guan Xiaoyu stopped asking since she could not get any techniques out of him and took Lin Qi to arrange a room for him. On the other side, at Lin Qi's original room, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao went there excitedly, wanting to talk to Lin Qi again. However, spiritual master Yun Shao was stunned upon looking at the empty room. What happened? Where is Lin Qi? Chapter 66. Dowry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 66. Dowry translator. Nyo I.bo studio editor. Nyo I.bo studio. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao frowned when he saw the empty room. Did Lin Qi go to the public training area? It couldn't be. He had already gone to the public training area before Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao came. Many disciples greeted him excitedly. However, he didn't find Lin Qi. That was why he came to Lin Qi's residence. However, he could not find Lin Qi there either. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao could ask them about Lin Qi's whereabouts if he asked other outer disciples in the public training area. After all, many people saw Lin Qi and Guan Xiaoyu leave together. But he did not ask. He was the sect master of the Baiyun sect, after all. He would lose his reputation if all the outer disciples knew that he kept looking for Lin Qi. Some things could be expressed only in private. But the Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao couldn't care less now that Lin Qi had disappeared. Although the possibility was exceptionally low, it would be a great loss for the sect if Lin Qi left the Baiyun sect. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao immediately returned to the Sky Reach Peak. Yu Yilin was still handling all the matters in the sect as usual in the Sky Reach Peak. He didn't go to find Lin Qi that day. He was busy. On the other hand, Yu Yilin didn't expect Lin Qi to have cultivated the Baiyun mantra and the flowing cloud movement technique to the maximum level. He thought that Lin Qi was already proficient, but he could continue to improve. Therefore, Yu Yilin didn't arrange other cultivation techniques for Lin Qi. Yilin. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao's voice came from behind. Yu Yilin immediately put down what he was doing and turned around. Greetings, Master. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao nodded slightly and went straight to the point. Yilin, have you seen Lin Qi today? That question stumped Yu Yilin. Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao was carefully guiding Zhang Wu's cultivation a day ago. Why did he suddenly care about Lin Qi today? Of course, Yu Yilin would not ask Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao about his doubts. He only answered truthfully, "Master, I have been handling matters today and have not seen Junior Lin." Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao's frown deepened at that moment. Yu Yilin finally took the initiative to ask upon sensing his master's strange behavior, "Master, did something happen?" Master Yunxiao hesitated for a moment and said, "Lin Qi, he disappeared." Disappeared. Yu Yilin was stunned when he heard that. Baiyun sect was not big, but it was not small either. Sometimes, it was normal to not being able to find a disciple in a short time. Who knew if the disciple was hiding somewhere trying to get off from cultivation and be lazy? Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao was making a big fuss over a small issue by paying so much attention to Lin Qi. However, Lin Qi was the most talented disciple this year, so it was understandable that Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao was more concerned. Yu Yilin asked tentatively, when he thought of that, "How about I send someone to find Junior Lin Qi's whereabouts?" Yu Yilin was just casually mentioning it. He didn't think that Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao would send someone to look for Lin Qi. However, Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao agreed. "Okay, do it right away. We must find Lin Qi's whereabouts." Yu Yilin realized that the situation was a little serious at that moment. Yu Yilin didn't dare to be negligent since Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao was so nervous and immediately sent someone to look for Lin Qi. Daoist spiritual master Yunxiao stayed there and kept thinking about what happened that day. Could it be that my active approach scared Lin Qi? The Yanhui branch. "Senior Lin, are you satisfied with this place?" Guan Xiaoyu brought Lin Qi to a big house and asked happily. Lin Qi was also a little surprised upon looking at the mansion in front of him. Although Yu Yilin had arranged for him to live alone, it was not big. It was just a tiny house. However, Yanhui branch was so generous that they arranged a mansion for Lin Qi. Lin Qi did not expect that. "I'm satisfied, but isn't it too big?" "It's not big. Didn't you hear my father say that he wants me to make good arrangements for you?" Guanzhen did say that, but it was just out of politeness. Lin Qi thought so in his heart, but he did not continue to be unreasonable and agreed. Guan Xiaoyu brought Lin Qi into the house while she leaped. Lin Qi was also a little affected upon looking at the lively Guan Xiaoyu in front of him, and his mood improved a little. Guan Xiaoyu was a little cautious after leaving Yanhui branch, and her words and actions were a little reserved. He did not expect that she had completely changed into a different person after returning to her territory, becoming lively and cheerful, much more playful. "Senior Lin, this is the bedroom. Senior Lin, this is the training room. Senior Lin, this is the kitchen." Guan Xiaoyu excitedly brought Lin Qi to introduce the distribution of the house one by one. It seemed that she was familiar with this place. Lin Qi couldn't help but ask curiously, "Junior Guan, are you very familiar with this house?" Guan Xiaoyu heard this and turned around with a smile, "Of course I'm familiar. My father said that this is my dowry." Guan Xiaoyu seemed to have realized something upon seeing Lin Qi's surprised expression. She blushed and whispered, "My father asked me to make good arrangements for you, but our Yanhui branch doesn't have any other houses. Anyway, I'm still too young to get married, so I'll let you stay here for now." Guan Xiaoyu had already buried her head very low, looking a little shy at the end of her words. It was no wonder. Guan Xiaoyu didn't think much about it at first. She just wanted to arrange a bigger house for Lin Qi. She subconsciously led Lin Qi here. But Guan Xiaoyu remembered the meaning of this house just as Lin Qi asked. Guan Xiaoyu peeked at Lin Qi carefully after saying that. Lin Qi was wearing a white robe, and his black hair was neatly combed at the back of his head at that moment. Not only was he handsome, but he also seemed to have a calmness and state of mind that people of the same age did not have. Guan Xiaoyu was a little dazed on the spot. Junior Guan. Lin Chi turned around and saw Guan Xiaoyu in a daze. He couldn't help but call her. Nothing. You can stay here if you like it. Lin Chi looked at Guan Xiaoyu, who was panicking like a thief being caught. He smiled and said, I like it very much. Thank you for your arrangement, Junior Guan. Lin Chi's thought was quite simple. The house was just a place to sleep. It didn't matter what it looked like as long as it was clean and quiet. He would naturally listen to Elder Guan's arrangement since he had come to Yanhui branch. However, Guan Xiaoyu was slightly taken aback upon hearing Lin Chi's reply, and her little face blushed again. After all, the house was her dowry, and Lin Chi said that he liked it very much. The girl's thoughts began to run wild again upon thinking of that. Chapter 67. Pay a visit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 67. Pay a visit. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. In the training room in Sky Reach branch. Zhang Wu was still practicing the flowing cloud movement technique. Zhang Wu was frantic and crazily practicing flowing cloud movement technique, ever since he learned that Lin Chi had only spent one day to master it. Zhang Wu held his breath and concentrated at that moment, focusing all his attention on controlling the flowing cloud movement technique. Then, a weak airflow gradually appeared around his body. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao's eyes immediately lit up. Zhang Wu was indeed a good material with good aptitude. It had only taken him 2 days, but he was already able to apply the flowing cloud movement technique to his entire body. It must be known that most disciples would take at least 1 to 3 months to control the flowing cloud movement technique only on their feet. It had to be said that Zhang Wu was indeed a talent in cultivation. However, the smile on Taoist master Yunxiao's face gradually disappeared when he thought of the word talent. The one who made him worry the most was still Lin Chi, that new disciple, when it was about talent. It was just that he did not know if Yilin had found Lin Chi yet. Zhang Wu, who was at the side, was still immersed in the joy of his improvement, waiting for Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao's praise. However, he saw a face full of worry when he turned his head to look at Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. Zhang Wu understood in an instant. His master was thinking about Lin Chi again. Strong jealousy feeling rose in Zhang Wu's heart. Why? He worked so hard, but his master only cared about Lin Chi. Why was his master still unwilling to praise him despite his great progress? Was Lin Chi that good? Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao hurriedly put on an amiable look and patted Zhang Wu's shoulder with a smile as if he had sensed Zhang Wu's strange behavior. Zhang Wu, I didn't expect you to be able to apply the flowing cloud movement technique to your entire body in just 2 days. You'll improve so fast that even I find it incredible. Zhang Wu was delighted again upon hearing Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao's praise, and his previous depressed mood was gone. As expected, his master still cared about him. Knock. 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 Someone knocked on the door of the training room. Yu Yilin's voice came from outside the door. Master, this disciple is back. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao's expression immediately changed before Zhang Wu could react. He walked to the door in quick steps, opened the door, and asked, How is it? Have you found Lin Chi? His concern was obvious. Yu Yilin saw that his master was anxious. He was about to report when he saw Zhang Wu standing behind Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao, looking disappointed. Yu Yilin naturally guessed what was going on upon seeing that. It seemed that Zhang Wu was jealous of Lin Chi. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao wanted to urge Yu Yilin to report quickly, but seeing Yu Yilin's expression, he seemed to have realized something. He followed Yu Yilin's line of sight and turned his head, only to see Zhang Wu's disappointed face. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao frowned slightly and realized that he had lost his composure this time. However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had no time to comfort Zhang Wu's emotions now. The most important thing was to find Lin Qi. Everything else could be put aside for the time being. Ahem, since a disciple has gone missing. The entire Baiyun sect must take this matter seriously. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao cleared his throat and changed the nature of that matter in just a few words. It was as if he was only worried about the safety of the Baiyun sect's disciples, and not because of Lin Qi. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao led Yu Yilin out of the training room after saying that. However, although the door was closed, the conversation outside was still clearly heard by Zhang Wu. Tell me, have you found Lin Qi? Yes, according to the outer disciples in the public training area, Lin Qi left with Guan Xiaoyu from Yanhui branch. Guan Xiaoyu. Is she the only daughter of Guan Zhen? Yes. Then, the voice outside the door paused for a moment, and then the voice of the Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao came again. That old man used his daughter to win Lin Qi over. How shameless. Yilin, follow me to Yanhui branch immediately. I want to find Guan Zhen and ask him about it. Then, the sound of hurried footsteps gradually faded away. Then, another wave of light footsteps followed. It seemed that Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao and Yu Yilin had gone to Yanhui branch. Zhang Wu's depressed mood was out of control upon looking at the empty training room. He sat down weakly on the ground and was in a daze. It seemed that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get the attention of the Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao. Lin Qi. In Yanhui branch. Guan Xiaoyu was staring at the clouds in the sky in a daze by the cliff. Meanwhile, Lin Qi stood silently behind her and didn't disturb her. At the same time, he was also enjoying the peace and silence. Although his first reincarnation was highly rated, it was a quick journey for Lin Qi. Yes, it was quick. Lin Qi rarely stopped to rest after his reincarnation. He was always doing things, constantly breaking through and cultivating. That would be too tiring. Every world had a different scenery, a different culture, and a different person. Why was he in such a hurry? The sunlight shone on Lin Qi's face, making him feel warm. It made Lin Qi feel comfortable all over. He would receive the highest evaluation as long as he was the strongest in this world before leaving this world. It was good to be slow. Lin Qi thought so. Guan Xiaoyu slowly turned around and looked at Lin Qi with a smile. How is it? The scenery of Yanhui Peak is not bad, right? Lin Qi heard this and laughed. It does have a different atmosphere compared to Sky Reach Peak. Oh. Senior Lin, what do you think about Sky Reach Peak and Yanhui Peak? Guan Xiaoyu playfully blinked her eyes and threw out such a question. Lin Qi smiled and thought for a while before answering. The Sky Reach Peak is surrounded by clouds and mist. It looks like a land of immortals. However, everyone is extremely busy, even more like a common person than a common person. And your Yanhui Peak has an atmosphere of a village to the Sky Reach Peak, yet it makes people feel very comfortable and relaxed. In my opinion, the branch of Yanhui Peak is the true immortal cultivator. These words came from the bottom of Lin Qi's heart, but when Guan Xiaoyu heard it, her cheeks puffed up with displease. Lin Qi felt a little curious this time and couldn't help but ask with a smile, Junior Guan, don't you like my evaluation? Guan Xiaoyu shook her head but still looked unhappy. She pouted and said, yes, I have the same thoughts, but... But what? Lin Qi became more and more curious and asked. But, you have already joined the Yanhui Peak. Why do you still address us as, your Yanhui Peak? Others would think that you are not a disciple of our Yanhui Peak when they hear that. Lin Qi was speechless upon hearing Guan Xiaoyu's complaint. He could not help but smile and say, yes, yes, yes. I should have considered more in such matter. I'm naturally a disciple of Yanhui Peak since I've become Elder Guan's disciple. I should say, our Yanhui Peak, instead. Senior Guan is right. Lin Chi even put on an act of cupping his hands and bowed after saying that, apologizing to Guan Xiaoyu. Guan Xiaoyu's depressed mood was swept away upon seeing that scene, and she giggled at Lin Chi's teasing. Lin Chi also felt that Guan Xiaoyu was simple-minded and did not seem like a shrewd person. He was relaxed when he talked to her. So Lin Chi was willing to tease her to make her happy. The two of them chatted for a while. But there were two extremely fast rays of light flying towards Yanhui Peak from the horizon. Guan Xiaoyu's expression suddenly became serious. She pointed at the two rays of light and said, "Senior Lin, there seem to be two people coming over." Lin Chi looked in the direction that Guan Xiaoyu was pointing at. As expected, two people were flying on swords. These two rays of light were emitted from the bodies of the two cultivators who were flying on swords. Although they could not see the faces of the people coming, they were indeed heading towards Yanhui Peak. However, they were not heading towards the two of them, but towards Guanzhou. Those two seemed to be looking for Elder Guan Bedo Dem, Lin Chi said with a serious expression. "Looking for my father." Guan Xiaoyu was stunned. "Unless my father has some important occasion that he must attend, he usually stays at Yanhui Peak and doesn't go anywhere. Why would these two come looking for my father?" Lin Chi squinted his eyes upon hearing Guan Xiaoyu's words. "I'm afraid they are of malicious intention." Although he did not know why these two people came to Guanzhou, it was probably not a good thing. It was because Lin Chi could feel that one of the two people seemed to be emitting an unfriendly aura. Chapter 68. Question. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 68. Question. Translator. Nyo I.Bo Studio Editor. Nyo I.Bo Studio. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao soon arrived at the doorway of Guanzhen's residence with Yu Yilin. The disciples of Yanhui Peak nearby were also approaching them since they didn't come in secret. "Master." Yu Yilin looked at Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao's back with a worried expression and wanted to say something. It had been a long time since he had seen Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao behave in such way. He had been a disciple of Baiyun sect for so many years, and Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao had always been calm and composed. He had come to Yanhui Peak to make things difficult for Elder Guan because of Lin Chi. How could he not be worried? However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao raised a hand and stopped Yu Yilin. "You need to say no more." Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao had already made up his mind about this matter and did not hesitate at all. Taoist Yun Xiao naturally wouldn't have any objections if Lin Chi wanted to join Yanhui Peak. After all, it was up to Lin Chi to decide where he wanted to join. Similarly, whether the elders wanted to accept this disciple depended on their wishes. The two-way choice depended entirely on their will. However, Guanzhen used his daughter to trick Lin Chi into joining Yanhui Peak. That was something Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao couldn't bear. If it was just an ordinary disciple. No, even Zhang Wu. Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao wouldn't do such a thing. Instead, he would think that Guanzhen was just so. He sent his daughter to put on a honey trap for a disciple. However, it would be different if it was Lin Chi. After all, Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao felt that he was 10,000 times stronger than Guanzhen. Be it his position in the Baiyun sect, his strength, or his resources. Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao felt he was much better than Guanzhen. The only thing he was not as good as Guanzhen was that he was a true Taoist disciple. Although the Baiyun sect was not like the Shaolin Temple, which required all its disciples to become monks, there were still many people who chose to devote themselves to cultivation. They were different from Guanzhen, an elder who had a wife and children. Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao was wholeheartedly devoted to cultivation, abandoning the love in the mortal world. However, it was because of this that Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao lost to Guanzhen. Guanzhen had a daughter, and she was quite beautiful. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao could not compete with Guanzhen on that point. Therefore, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao had the thought that Lin Qi was influenced by that and was abducted by Guanzhen. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao brought Yu Yilin to cause trouble there to prevent such a good seedling from being snatched away by Yanhui Peak. Elder Guan, you are good at playing tricks. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao stood outside the Guan residence and said in a clear voice. Although his voice was not loud, everyone on Yanhui Peak heard what he said. Everyone's hearts thumped. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao seemed like he did not come with good intentions from what he said. At the same time, many disciples had doubts in their hearts. What did their master, Elder Guan, do to make Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao say such words? Soon, Guanzhen walked out of the house with a frown. He was at home choosing a cultivation technique and prepared to teach Lin Qi to cultivate. However, that unfriendly tone made him had to come out of his residence. Senior sect master, what do you mean by this? Guanzhen had already asked the question before he walked out of the house. Many disciples of Yanhui Peak had already gathered around that area at that moment. Guanzhen wouldn't let Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao go if he didn't make things clear here. So what if he was the sect leader? He, as one of the elders of the Baiyun sect, wasn't someone that the sect leader could slander out of thin air. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao looked at Guanzhen coldly and said with a sneer upon hearing his question, you know what I mean. Guanzhen had already come to the outside of the house at that moment and stood facing Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. Guanzhen's frown was deeper upon seeing that Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao was speaking incoherently. I, Guanzhen, have never been involved in the affairs of the Baiyun sect. Senior, I don't know what you mean. Please enlighten me, senior sect leader. Guanzhen had already lowered his stance enough when he said that. It seemed like there was some misunderstanding from what he heard from Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao. In his opinion, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao would not have done things to this extent if there was no misunderstanding. And Guanzhen only wanted to clarify the matter. He did not want his disciples to have any misunderstanding about him. Similarly, he did not want his disciples to be pointed at and criticized by others when they encountered other disciples from Baiyun sect in the future. There were already more and more disciples gathered around. It was impossible not to clarify this matter. Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao said coldly when he saw that Guanzhen still wanted to deny it. Elder Guan, things have already come to this extent. Do you still want to play dumb? Guanzhen frowned more when he heard that. He was already angry at that point, but he didn't lose his temper because of his reputation. However, the surrounding disciples were already whispering to each other. That matter couldn't be allowed to go unclarified. Guanzhen thought for a moment and said, I don't understand what senior sect leader means. Please explain yourself here. There would be rumors among the disciples if Guanzhen invited Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao into the room for a private chat. The best way was to make things clear was to confront the matter in front of the crowd. Guanzhen thought that he had done the right thing and was not afraid. He would not be afraid if Taoist spiritual master were to say anything in the crowd. However, Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao sneered again and said, Elder Guan, aren't you afraid of losing your reputation in front of so many disciples? Guanzhen could no longer suppress his anger at that point. He looked straight at Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao and said word by word, I, Guanzhen, am a righteous person. I have no guilt. If there is anything, senior sect leader, just say it. I will as well prove that I am innocent in front of the disciples. Many disciples began to discuss upon hearing Guanzhen's words. Since Master said so, there must be some misunderstanding. Indeed, I don't believe that Master is someone who would do something that goes against his heart. I don't believe it either. There must be some misunderstanding. Many disciples had even begun to question Taoist spiritual master Yunxiao loudly, sect leader, please speak clearly. However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao did not scold him when he heard these questions. That was the effect he wanted. Only in such a situation could he give Guan Zhen a hard slap. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao sneered and said as he faced the questioning voices from all around, "Elder Guan, I will speak frankly since you are not afraid of losing your reputation. May I ask, did you ask your daughter Guan Xiaoyu to seduce Lin Qi into joining Yanhui Peak?" All the disciples gasped upon hearing that. Guan Zhen, on the other hand, was furious. He shouted with his blushed neck, "Yun Shao, you're bullshitting." Chapter 69. Giving Away Treasures. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 69. Giving Away Treasures. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. Guan Zhen cursed on the spot when he heard Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao's words. However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao laughed instead of being angry. "Guan Zhen, do you dare to say that you didn't do it?" It seemed like the matter was true upon listening to Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao's eloquent questioning. Many disciples believed it. After all, many people had seen Guan Xiaoyu and Lin Qi walking together with their own eyes. The people of Yanhui Peak naturally recognized Guan Xiaoyu, Guan Zhen's daughter. There were even many people who liked Guan Xiaoyu. Many people were jealous regarding this matter. Guan Zhen was already in a raged state at that moment. The Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was the sect master of the Baiyun sect, and at the same time, he was his senior. Guan Zhen would tolerate it if he bullied him for something. However, how could he tolerate it now that Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had slandered his daughter? "Yun Shao, don't try to accuse without proof. I, Guan Zhen, have always had a clear conscience. I will never do such a thing." Many disciples nodded slightly upon hearing Guan Zhen's words. Everyone could see how their master usually dealt with things. That didn't seem like what Guan Zhen would do. But Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was still confident. He sneered and said, "How could you have taken Lin Qi as your disciple if you didn't use your daughter as bait? In terms of strength, status, and resources, I can't defeat you, Guan Zhen, in any way. I can give Lin Qi the best cultivation techniques and even the best treasures. What else can you, Guan Zhen, give Lin Qi other than your daughter?" The veins on Guan Zhen's forehead had already popped out upon hearing that. Indeed, Guan Zhen could not compare to what the Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao could give in terms of resources. But Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had insulted his daughter. Guan Zhen had to fight for her reputation and his rage. Resources. I, Guan Zhen, am willing to give the Chaos Yuan Heaven and Earth umbrella to Lin Qi. Are you willing to give it to him? Everyone was shocked when they heard Guan Zhen's words. The Chaos Yuan Heaven and Earth umbrella. Not to mention Baiyun sect. Even the other righteous sects of the Central Plains had heard of that name. After all, this was a rare treasure that Guan Zhen had used himself. Not to mention that it was the only one, even its outstanding battle achievements were enough to shock the world. And Guan Zhen was willing to give the Chaos Yuan Heaven and Earth umbrella to Lin Qi. That was indeed a big deal. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was stumped at that time. It wouldn't be surprising if Lin Qi were willing to join Yanhui Peak if Guan Zhen was willing to give such a treasure to Lin Qi. Then, the accuse of his daughter seducing Lin Qi would naturally fall apart. They had to say that Guan Zhen had indeed put in a lot of effort to protect his daughter's reputation this time. However, Guan Zhen also believed that Lin Qi was worth it. He could retire peacefully and enjoy his old age with a talent like Lin Qi joining Yanhui Peak. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was slightly stunned, seeing that Guan Zhen put in so much effort. Then, he stroked his beard and said proudly, "The Chaos Yuan Heaven and Earth umbrella. It's just so. The disciples were also curious upon hearing that. What would Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao give Lin Qi if he even said that Chaos Yuan Heaven and Earth umbrella was just so? That fight had become a battle of pride to compete with the assets they had. And Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao naturally could not accept losing to Guan Zhen in terms of assets. Senior Yun Shao, since you could say that, what can you give Lin Qi? Guan Zhen sneered. He knew that Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had nothing better to offer in terms of weapons. In other words, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao would be reluctant to give Lin Qi something better. However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was willing to give it to Lin Qi. The disciples of our Baiyun sect have always practiced the sword. I'm willing to give the sky, scraping sword to Lin Qi. The disciples gasped upon hearing that. The sky, scraping sword. That was the supreme treasure of the sky, reach peak. Because that sky, scraping sword was the divine weapon that Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao used when he was young. Although Taoist master Yun Shao no longer used this sword, everyone knew how precious this immortal sword was. It was because that sword was hanging in the Shanha Hall of the sky, reach peak. The treasure of the hall. Even Guanzhen's lips could not help but twitch in such moments. That old man was willing to give the sky, scraping sword to Lin Qi. It seemed that he wanted to hand over the Baiyun sect master position to Yu Yilin as soon as possible. However, Guanzhen definitely couldn't lose even though this matter was a battle of who was superior. A sect master and an elder competing in front of a group of disciples to give a new disciple treasure was a big scandal. However, Guanzhen had to win since his daughter was involved. At the same time, Guanzhen wanted to compete for Lin Qi to be his disciple. Humph, the disciples of the Baiyun sect do mostly practice the sword, but how do you know if Lin Qi likes the umbrella or the sword? Guanzhen's words were not without reason. Just because everyone liked to practice swordsmanship, it did not mean that Lin Qi preferred to practice swordsmanship. It was not necessarily true that the sect leader's sky, scraping sword was better than his Chaos Yuan heaven and earth umbrella. Then, Guanzhen changed the topic. Lin Qi is one of the best among the new generation of disciples. He will participate in the upcoming sect competition of the Central Plains. It's said to be a competition of martial arts, but swords could hurt someone easily. I, Guanzhen, am willing to give Lin Qi the black gold Kirin armor. What can you, Yun Shao, give? The black gold Kirin armor. That was the soft armor that Guanzhen always wore. It was said that one would be invulnerable as long as they wore the black gold Kirin armor. It would be difficult to hurt even a single hair of the wearer, no matter what kind of immortal weapon one used to attack. Unless the wearer met someone extremely powerful and used overwhelming strength to attack, only then would it be possibly damaged. All the disciples looked at Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao in unison. According to the previous trend battle, it was his turn to give out something. Humph, what is the black gold Kirin armor? Lin Qi, this kid, is handsome and has an extraordinary temperament. What does he look like when he wears heavy armor? All the disciples frowned slightly. The black gold Kirin armor was soft. Rumors said that it was only 7 or 2 taels of weight. How could it be considered heavy armor? However, what he said next made everyone agree that the armor was heavy. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao took off his Taoist robe on the spot and said proudly, "What do you think of this boundless heaven and earth robe compared to your black gold Kirin armor?" Some disciples were already looking at each other. Obviously, they did not recognize this robe. However, Guanzhen knew what it was. That was because this boundless heaven and earth robe was a supreme treasure that the previous sect master personally gave to Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao 50 years ago. And now, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao wanted to give the treasure given by his master to Lin Qi. Chapter 70. Clarification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 70. Clarification. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. Guanzhen's expression was awkward. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this boundless heaven and earth robe was not inferior to Guanzhen's black gold Kirin armor. On the other hand, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was still looking pleased and confident. What a joke! How could he, as the sect master of Baiyun sect, lose to an elder in a competition of assets? Wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? Of course, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had put in a lot of effort since he was willing to give up this boundless heaven and earth robe. He looked pleased with himself on the surface, but it hurt him deep within to let go of so many things. After all, he intended to give that Daoist robe to Yu Yilin. The Taoist robe that the previous sect master had passed on to him and then passed on to the next sect master would be a beautiful legend. However, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao had no choice but to take it out to fight for Lin Qi. Fortunately, Yu Yilin didn't know that he had planned to give the boundless heaven and earth robe to him. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao didn't know how to face his beloved disciple. I'll find some other treasure to give to Yilin in the future, Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao thought so in his heart. The situation was a little awkward at such a moment. Guanzhen didn't win in the 2 treasures that he had taken out. The rumor that he had let his daughter seduce Lin Qi would be true to others if that went on. Although he had never done that, rumors were terrible. There was no way to prove that he didn't need to sacrifice his daughter to win Lin Qi over if he couldn't come up with something better. However, he had almost nothing left to offer. If he wanted to give out more, he would have to take out what he had intended to give to his daughter. Finally, Guanzhen hesitated. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao naturally saw Guanzhen's hesitation. He felt a wave of pride in his heart. Now, he would see what Guanzhen had to say. Bino LDM that was more like it. He had weapons and defensive equipment as the sect leader. There was no reason for Lin Qi to join Yanhui Peak. Guanzhen must have used his daughter to charm Lin Qi. It seemed that if that competition were fair, Lin Qi would still choose Sky Reach Peak. Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao was even more pleased with himself. He could no longer hide the smile on his face. A calm voice sounded from the crowd just when everyone thought Guanzhen was going to lose. Taoist spiritual sect master, are you two talking about this disciple? The crowd automatically opened a path upon hearing that, revealing the 2 people behind them. It was Lin Qi and Guan Xiaoyu. Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao's heart skipped a beat when he heard that Lin Qi had already called Guanzhen his master. Was he too late? Lin Qi slowly walked to the front and looked at Taoist spiritual master Yun Shao upon seeing that the crowd had parted to make way for him. Disciple Lin Qi greets Taoist spiritual sect master. Then, he turned around and looked at Guanzhen, bowing. Master, this disciple is late. Everyone understood upon seeing that. It seemed that Lin Qi chose Guanzhen after all. However, it was unknown whether the reason Lin Qi chose Guanzhen was because of Guan Xiaoyu. However, Lin Qi said lightly, just as everyone was speculating, although I don't know where the sect leader heard the rumor, Lin Qi can guarantee it with my personality. That I asked to join Yanhui Peak on my will, and it has nothing to do with anyone. Master has never promised me any benefits. Sect leader, it's all rumors if you have heard anything from somewhere. Sect leader, I humbly ask you to clear my master's name. Although Lin Qi's words sounded casual, each of his words was loud and clear. Everyone at the scene heard it. Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao's expression had turned gloomy this time. Lin Qi had willingly joined Yanhui Peak. Who would believe it? Why would Lin Qi suddenly be willing to acknowledge a master if not because of those benefits? Even if he wanted to acknowledge a master, he would have to acknowledge him, Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao of Sky Reach Peak as his master. What was Guanzhen of Yanhui Peak in front of him? Guanzhen must have used his daughter to set a honey trap. Guan Xiaoyu coming to the scene with Lin Qi explained everything. However, although Taoist spiritual master Yun Xiao thought so in his heart, he could not say so. After all, Lin Qi had already said so as the person involved in this matter. The matter would become bad if Daoist spiritual master insisted that Guan Xiaoyu had seduced Lin Qi. At the same time, Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao didn't want to make enemies with Lin Qi. Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao could only sigh and say helplessly under everyone's gaze, since Lin Qi himself has said so, it seems that I have misunderstood Elder Guan. Junior Guan, please forgive me for being a fool. Guan Zhen was very unwilling to forgive Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao. After all, he had accused his daughter. Any father wouldn't be willing to let it go. However, he was the sect master of the Baiyun sect, after all. Guan Zhen had to leave him with some reputation, at least. Moreover, Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao had already shown his sincerity by apologizing in front of so many people. It would seem that Guan Zhen was an unkind person if he kept holding on to the matter. It's nothing. I have nothing to fuss about since the misunderstanding has been resolved. The quarrel between the Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao and Guan Zhen was resolved instantly because of Lin Qi's words. Subconsciously, everyone could not help but look at the disciple, Lin Qi. They saw that Lin Qi was wearing a white robe that an ordinary disciple wore, which was ordinary. However, it gave them a faint feeling that Lin Qi had an extraordinary being's temperament when he wore it. That was not surprising. After all, Lin Qi had already reached the spiritual saint manifestation realm in his last reincarnation. His temperament was naturally incomparable to that of an ordinary person. It was normal for disciples to have such an illusion. Since the misunderstanding has been resolved, I won't waste Elder Guan's time. Goodbye. Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao was already regretting it. He had rushed to Yanhui Peak on impulse to cause trouble, which was embarrassing. What was even more embarrassing was that he as the sect master of the Baiyun sect had quarreled with an elder of the same sect for the sake of a disciple. He would probably be humiliated for 10 years if that matter spread out. Even Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao himself did not know why. He would subconsciously pay attention to the matter if it were about Lin Qi. He might even be impulsive. Lin Qi. That disciple should not be taken easily. His existence was like the brightest star in the sky. He could be caught at a glance no matter where he was hiding in the crowd. That was probably what a favored son of heaven was supposed to be. Daoist spiritual master Yun Xiao reluctantly turned his head to look at Lin Qi. He still flew on his sword and left Yanhui Peak in the end. Guan Zhen, on the other hand, looked at Lin Qi gratefully. His daughter might have been framed if Lin Qi had not spoken for him just now. Guan Zhen had a thought in mind when he recalled about that. He had to treat Lin Qi well.